Thanks, Harold. Nista pikskuid ni heon absisi kakao no dentik no ako maganak. Nenaskomon kinanaskom tinoaw kakiyaw kiteyak ukimawak iskoyak napayak. Hodonosoni kinanaskom tinoaw anot stapo ina mamio kiskao anamo tawin an cemento kinanaskom tin. My relatives, my friends, just a little bit in Cree. I'm very happy to be here. I acknowledge the elders, the chiefs that are here, the men, the women, and of course acknowledge our kind, loving Creator for another beautiful day. Acknowledge as well the Mohawk people, the Haudenosaunee people for hosting us. We say thank you to them and their traditional territories here. One of the most successful suburbs of Ganawag. So we say thank you to the Mohawk Nation. Nista, I also want to say the 36th gathering of us as Indigenous peoples, Indigenous nations, Indigenous tribes, in the theme, closing the gap, building nations, and asserting sovereignty. Very important words for us that will guide us. I'll acknowledge as well the words from Grand Chief Joe Norton, Grand Chief Sarah Simon, as well my colleague Ghislain Picard, for their kind words, their good words, and their direction. I also want to acknowledge and welcome to our team, your team. Chiefs have come together and selected leadership in British Columbia, and welcome former Chief of Kamloops, Regional Chief Shane Godfredson, we welcome to our team, to our table. In Alberta, former Chief and Leader as well, Chief Craig Mackinac is here. And as well in Ontario, Regional Chief Isidore Day, strong leader. The chiefs have come together and said, we want you to represent our territory, to bring our issues and concerns, and to work as a team. So we welcome them to our executive. And of course, our workhorse, longtime advocate, re-elected, Mike Smith from the Yukon. We welcome him back to our tables. So this is our team so far. We know there's some changes, our elections in Manitoba and in Saskatchewan eventually, And so there might be other changes, we don't know. But this is what we're working with, so we welcome them. As a team, together everybody achieves more. I also want to acknowledge the words and the welcome from Minister Kelly. And I know we're gearing up for the Council of the Federation next week or so when all the premiers come together. So we welcome his words and comments about working together about reconciliation. And acknowledge as well their participation in the audience, listening, as Chief Belrose so aptly put it. And they're good words, in terms of listening to our concerns and issues and having accessibility, because we also have Carolyn Bennett from the Liberals and Romy Saganash from the NDP. And having been to their caucuses, with their leadership, one of the things I have asked, that at least when this election is done October 19th, that the Prime Minister, whoever will be selected, come to this assembly on a regular basis. Come to listen and take direction from the Chiefs of Canada. Come and hear the concerns and react to what the Chiefs have to say. And so whatever happens October 19, that's one of the things we advocated for. Because it's far too long where the leadership don't come and respect the first order of government in Canada, which is our governments. I also want to acknowledge the staff that put this together. And as my colleague Ghislain indicated, 3 months. It usually takes a little longer, but we lift them up and thank them for the planning and the organizing. We thank them for their efforts. It's easy for us to sit up here, but we need a strong team putting this work together. This morning, my heart and my thoughts and my mind kind of go out to our people that are suffering. People that have been transplaced from their communities because of the fires. 13,000 people have been displaced from their homes in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and parts of BC. Even from the floods, 4 years now in northern Manitoba, they have not been able to go home. So we acknowledge and send our thoughts and energy and prayers for safety for them and for a quick return to their communities. It's so vital that we acknowledge and try to help and lift each other up in these times of distress. That's what we're all about as Indigenous peoples. So my thoughts, my mind, my energy go out to them and to try to lift them up. And something as well, we always acknowledge the drum We've heard the drums and we heard different languages spoken. We heard Dene, Ojibwe, Mohawk. The importance of those drums, they bring us together. That heartbeat of Mother Earth. The importance of acknowledging the women, very important. And I also want to acknowledge something going on that's very vital to our survival as Indigenous peoples, or our survival as the two-legged peoples. And I'm going to acknowledge the water walkers, Josephine Mandamin, and what she's doing about raising awareness, about protecting the streams, the waters, the rivers, from the pollution in Quebec and Ontario, whether it be from tankers or whether it be from railways or ships. Because our elders always say, the rivers and the streams and the lakes provide life to Mother Earth, just like the veins in our bodies provide life to our bodies. And they must be clean. They must be clean. So I lift up Josephine Mandamin in the walk that she's doing. Not only for herself, but for all of us as Indigenous peoples. It is now 6 months into my term as National Chief, and the first time we are gathering since that election. I want to thank all of you once again for your support and the honor you have given to me. And we all know, we say we're at an historic time in our history. For decades, our people have struggled to attain the same quality of life that other Canadians enjoy, while treaty commitments remain unfulfilled and fundamental rights ignored. Despite not one, but 2 apologies from the federal government and a multitude of promises to make things better, commitments in treaties and modern treaties go unmet. We continue to face educational systems which ignore our languages, our histories, our knowledge systems, and our values. But today, as we gather together to chart a course forward, we can feel the change that is coming, that we and our ancestors and our elders have worked so hard for, the change that our young people crave and desire and want. The interim report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission captured the attention of Canadians and the whole world at large. For the first time, the term cultural genocide was used, and people across this land, this country, learned what the words residential schools really meant. Justice Sinclair called it cultural genocide. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada calls it cultural genocide. Make no mistake, it is genocide. Part of a long, terrible, and tragic history to remove Indians and Indigenous identity from these lands, our lands. Many others are using this term. It's a harsh but necessary acknowledgement of the history of this country. And as thousands of brave former students shared their experiences and spoke the truth, Canadians woke up to a chapter of their history that must be forever remembered and never forgotten. The legacy of the residential schools does not end with the suffering and the damage done throughout more than 100 years of abuse. No. Because with that promise of reconciliation comes an opportunity to rebuild this country. An opportunity to rebuild this country in a manner that our ancestors envisioned. Reconciliation means nothing less than keeping the promises that the Government of Canada first made to our people to share and live together in peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. To mutually benefit from the lands and the resource wealth of these territories. Reconciliation means honoring those original promises and to restore that original relationship to one based on respect in recognition of our title and rights. Governments must respect our right to determine what happens in our traditional territories. So too must they respect and share our commitment to Mother Earth, to care for the lands and waters. When we have that inherent right to self-determination, it's the right to say yes to developments and our no to developments. This reconciliation means the government must honor its legal duty to consult and accommodate. The way forward will be found through free, prior, and informed consent, government-to-government relationships, replacing the patriarchal imposition of governance without our involvement. Reconciliation means that governments in Canada must make Indigenous languages official languages of Canada, the provinces and the territories. And we must have the financial resources for the revitalization programs, the immersion programs in schools and community-based efforts. We will not be the generation that stands by and watches our languages disappear. Because if our languages disappear, that's one of the elements that's required for that right to self-determination to be recognized. Our own languages, our own lands, our own laws, our own identifiable forms of government, and our own people. That language is so vital to our existence. Reconciliation means continuing to push for the national public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Reconciliation means justice for our day scholars. It means focusing on the high number of children in provincial care. Reconciliation involves all Canadians. Just as all Canadians are learning the truth of our shared past, we ask that Canadians appreciate the great potential that comes with reconciliation. The great potential that comes with removing the racial stereotypes that Indigenous peoples are dumb, stupid, lazy, and drunk on welfare. Remove that stereotype. Remove the misconceptions and allow new things to come in. Reconciliation can mean acceptance and validation of our languages and our cultures and our histories. A Canada that rights these wrongs and sets us on a path to the future that our ancestors envisioned is a stronger, more vibrant, more prosperous Canada. With justice and respect and healing will come strength and fulfillment and the ability to lead healthy lives. With reconciliation comes an ability to contribute our talents, our ingenuity, our unique knowledge and understanding of this land. Canadians are known the world over as fair and welcoming people. Canada is a diverse country that welcomes other cultures, a champion of human rights and peaceful coexistence. These are the values that Canadians cherish. I believe that Canadians want their political leaders to do the right thing when it comes to healing the rifts with First Nations people and the rest of Canadian society. And as Canadians consider their future in this election year, it is essential that we capture their imagination and we share with them what strong and healthy First Nations people will mean for this country. We will make progress when more Canadians realize that First Nations being lifted out of poverty, empowered to deliver our own education, living in healthy homes with clean water, and the same basic health care that all Canadians enjoy. When more Canadians see that this ends the cycle of poverty and abuse and violence and alcoholism and incarceration, when more Canadians embrace our ancestors' vision and say enough is enough of that, then we will have a government that takes action and makes progress on the reconciliation we await. Then we will see difference when Canadians say those things. Throughout this meeting, we will be joined by other national leaders, people like David Suzuki, federal party leaders, former Prime Minister, people who have made commitments to realize this future and work with us to make a change. To these leaders, I say thank you for your support. Thank you for standing with us. But there's much, much more work to do because we need to close the gap now. And the gap I continually talk about is a gap that exists in this country in terms of quality of life. Because Canada has been ranked, according to the United Nations Human Development Index, way up here at 6. But when the same indices are applied to our people, we're 63rd way down here. That's the gap we talk about. And that gap, even according to the federal government's Community Wellness Index, has not changed since 1981. 1981. So I ask you to join us by lending your voice to our call for action now. To the chiefs here, I also ask you to reach out to other leaders in your territories, in your communities, to seek their help and support in this cry for action and to close the gap. Seek out partnerships. Mayors and reeves, environmental activists, young people, elders, community builders, business people, church groups. They want to partner. Reach out to them. We do need their help and support because that cry for change and reconciliation is getting louder. With this election coming, when more voices are saying this, these potential leaders will say, yes, we need to listen. We need their voices to join ours. We need their leadership to build a chorus of Canadian voices demanding change once and for all for our peoples. Now, you cannot talk about closing this gap without talking about funding. And you as chiefs and leaders know that you're challenged to provide the basic social services that all Canadians enjoy because we've been consistently and chronically underfunded when compared to the provinces providing the same services. And of course, I'm talking about the 2% cap. The 2% cap that's been in place, it's now 20 years old as a temporary measure that Indian Affairs was to put in place for Indian Affairs funding out to the reserves. 20 years of the temporary measure, the 2% cap on financial resources that's supposed to put in place quality housing, clean drinking water, quality schools for our young people. The 2% cap is the cap on Canada's potential that forces us to administer our own poverty. And I know you know what I mean when I say that. As National Chief, I believe that Canada has an obligation and a self-interest in lifting that cap. And I believe that Canada has an obligation for significant investments now to get First Nations even to the starting line in terms of quality of life. I will do my part to promote the lifting of the cap and securing the much-needed investments in housing, education, clean drinking water. I always say invest in the fastest-growing segment of Canada's population, our young men and women. Invest now and there'll be huge rates of return on investments in the future. We must all do our part. We are heading into a federal election October 19th, and I'm committed to doing all that I can to influence the federal party's platforms. I've already spoken at the NDP and the Liberal Party caucus meetings. I've told them about the fundamental essential need to remove the 2% cap and create a new fiscal arrangement with the Crown. I'm willing to speak to whomever is willing to listen, and I can't do it alone. It's going to take our strong collective voice to do this. And I want us to educate our people on where to vote, when to vote, and how to vote, and what we need to have in place to vote. Getting the vote out starts with making sure that all of our people have their identification in place. We can make a difference in at least 51 ridings. 51 ridings can make a difference between a majority and minority government. People are starting to see that. Show that our people count. Show that our people matter. Show that we can make a difference, and show that our issues will not be put to the side. We are already becoming a strong factor in this next federal election. Now is the time for change. Now is the time to close the gap. Now is the time to embrace the new era of reconciliation. Because when our children live in quality homes, quality housing, go to quality schools grounded in their languages and their cultures, when they have access to the same health care that all Canadian children do, then all of Canada wins. All of Canada will benefit. That gap is not good for our people, and it's not good for Canada. Together in unity and strength, we will make a difference. Chiefs, we can close the gap. Please continue with me on this historic journey. Ego se. Thank you very much.